My name is Yvonne. I am 54 years old, and I learned that my coworker of 22 years had stolen my life's work from a press release sent to my own inbox on a Tuesday morning while I was still chewing a bite of dry toast. The subject line had an exclamation point. I remember that detail more than I should. I read his name where mine should have been, and I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I walked to the coffee machine, poured a cup I did not drink, and thought about a green spiral notebook from 2001 that nobody else remembered existed. I came in at 6 every morning for 22 years. Not because anyone asked me to. Because the lab was quiet then, and the fluorescent lights made a soft humming sound that I found comforting in a way I never tried to explain to anyone. I am a biochemist at a mid-sized pharmaceutical company outside Philadelphia. The kind of company nobody writes articles about. We make the unglamorous things. Stabilizers, buffers, the chemistry that keeps a vaccine alive in a refrigerator in a small clinic in a town you have never heard of. I trained half the lab. I trained Brian. He came to us in 2003, 26 years old, with a fresh doctorate and a habit of laughing too loud at his own jokes. I showed him how to label a vial properly. I showed him how to keep a bound lab notebook the way the older scientists taught me, page-numbered, dated, signed at the end of each day by a second scientist who had witnessed the work. Brian thought it was old-fashioned. He told me once that nobody did it that way anymore. I told him the Food and Drug Administration still did. He laughed and said I was sweet. I kept doing it anyway, every page, every day, for 22 years. We became friends, or I thought we did. We ate lunch together on Wednesdays. He brought his daughter to the company picnic when she was 4, and she called me Aunt Yvonne, and I cried in my car afterward because I do not have children of my own. My husband Daniel died in 2014, a heart attack on a Saturday morning while he was pouring orange juice. Brian came to the funeral. He wore a tie that did not match his suit. He hugged me and said Daniel had been a good man. I remember thinking it was kind of him to notice the tie was wrong and wear it anyway because he was rushing to be there. Things like that. Small things. That is what made what happened later feel impossible. In 2023, I developed something. I do not like to call it a breakthrough because the word sounds too big for what the work actually feels like in your hands. It was a stabilization compound for a pediatric vaccine, something that would let the vaccine survive longer without refrigeration, something that would matter in places where refrigeration is a luxury. I worked on it for 14 months before I told anyone. Early mornings, Saturdays, a green spiral notebook on top of my bound lab notebooks, where I kept rough thoughts before I formalized them into the official record. When I had the first real results, I told Brian over lunch. We were eating at the Vietnamese place 2 blocks from the lab. I had the pho. He had the bun. I drew the basic structure on a paper napkin and I slid it across the table. He looked at it for a long time. Then he said it was beautiful work. He said congratulations. He squeezed my hand. That was March. The press release came 11 months later. I want to tell you what those 11 months looked like because nothing felt wrong. That is the part I keep coming back to. Nothing felt wrong. We had lunch on Wednesdays. He asked me how the compound was developing. I told him. I gave him updates. I trusted him the way you trust someone after 20 years of birthday cards and funeral hugs and shared coffee. He started staying late. I noticed it, but I did not think anything of it. His wife had left him in 2021, and he had told me once that he hated going home to the empty house. I understood that. I went home to an empty house, too. He started asking for copies of certain data files. He said he wanted to learn the technique so he could apply it to his own projects. I sent them. I sent them with notes explaining the methodology. I sent them because that is what you do for a friend. On a Tuesday morning in February, I was eating toast at my desk. The toast was dry because I had forgotten to buy butter. The email landed in my inbox, a company-wide press release. Brian had been named sole inventor on a patent application for a novel pediatric vaccine stabilization compound. I read it 3 times. I thought there had been a mistake. I thought my name had been left off accidentally and someone would correct it by the afternoon. Then I saw the internal email Brian had sent. He had sent it to the whole research division. He wrote about his achievement. He used the word my compound, my breakthrough, my work. I sat at my desk. I finished the toast. I do not know why I finished the toast. I just remember chewing. I walked to the coffee machine. There was a woman from accounting there, Marjorie, who I had said good morning to for 19 years, and whose grandson's name I could not remember. She asked me if I had seen the email about Brian. She said it was so exciting. I said yes. I said it was wonderful news. I poured a cup of coffee, and I carried it back to my desk, and I did not drink it. I sat there for a long time. I thought about the napkin in the Vietnamese restaurant. I thought about Brian squeezing my hand. I thought about the funeral tie that did not match. And then I thought about the notebooks. 87 pages, bound, page numbered, dated. Each entry signed at the end of each day by a second scientist. 87 pages predating Brian's earliest possible claim. Sitting in a locked cabinet in the records room on the second floor, where I had placed them myself across 2 decades. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that. I felt tired. I felt the kind of tired that lives in your bones. I went home that night, and I made myself a sandwich, and I ate it standing up at the kitchen counter, the way I had been eating dinner since Daniel died. I called my sister Patricia, and I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I have thought about every day since. She said, "The cruelest people are the ones who let you train them." I did not sleep. I lay in bed, and I listened to the refrigerator hum, and I thought about the green spiral notebook from 2001, the one where I had first written the early ideas that eventually became the compound. Brian had never seen that notebook. He did not know it existed. The next morning, I came in at 6. I went to the records room. I pulled every bound notebook from 2001 forward. I carried them to my office. I locked the door. I went through them page by page, every entry signed, every date witnessed, every idea documented. I did not say anything at work that day, or the next day, or the week after. I let Brian celebrate. He brought in pastries from the bakery near his apartment. People clapped for him in the break room. He gave a small speech. He thanked the company. He thanked his mentors. He did not say my name. I smiled. I clapped. I ate a pastry. It tasted like nothing. A friend of Daniel's had been a patent litigator before he retired. I called him on a Saturday morning. I told him the story in a flat voice, like I was reading it from a page. He listened. When I was done, he asked me one question. He asked me if I had documentation. I told him I had 87 pages predating Brian's earliest claim, bound and witnessed, going back to 2001. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I will remember for the rest of my life. He said, "Yvonne, you have already won. You just have to file the paperwork." I retained a patent litigator the following Monday. A woman named Helen, 61 years old, with steel gray hair and a calm voice. She came to the records room with me. She looked at the notebooks. She ran her finger down a page from August of 2001. She nodded once, slowly. She said this was the cleanest documentation she had seen in 15 years. The correction of inventorship petition was filed in March. Brian did not know. The company did not know. Helen handled everything. I kept coming in at 6. I kept eating lunch in the break room. I kept smiling at Brian on Wednesdays. He asked me once in late March if everything was all right. He said I seemed quiet. I told him I was just tired. I told him I had not been sleeping well. He squeezed my shoulder and said I should take care of myself. He said the company needed me. I remember almost laughing, not because it was funny, because it was so absurd that I did not know what else to do with my face. The petition was granted in early April. The correction was made. The patent was reassigned. I was named sole inventor. Brian was removed entirely. He was called into a meeting with legal and human resources on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the lab when it happened. I was running a routine assay. I heard a door close down the hall. I heard footsteps. I did not look up. He was terminated for cause that same afternoon. I learned the details later. He had falsified dates on internal documents. He had claimed work that was not his. The company had no choice. I did not see him leave. Someone told me he had to be escorted out by security because he kept asking to speak to me. He kept saying my name. He kept saying he needed to explain. I was not in the building by then. I had gone home early for the first time in 22 years. I drove home in silence. I did not turn on the radio. I made myself a cup of tea, and I sat at the kitchen table and I cried for about 4 minutes. Then I stopped. I do not know why I stopped. The tears just ended. I went back to work the next morning at 6. The patent is mine now. The compound will go into production next year. Children in places without reliable refrigeration will receive vaccines that survive the journey. That is what I tell myself when I cannot sleep. That is what I tell myself when I walk past Brian's empty desk. His desk is still empty. They have not hired a replacement yet. Sometimes I stop and look at it. There is still a coffee ring on the surface from a mug he used to leave there. Someone should wipe it off. Nobody has. I ate lunch alone last Wednesday at the Vietnamese place. I ordered the po. The waiter remembered me. He asked where my friend was. I told him my friend was not coming anymore. He nodded and did not ask why. I ate slowly. I left a larger tip than usual. I came in at 6 this morning. I will come in at 6 tomorrow. The fluorescent lights still hum. The lab is still quiet. There is a new bound notebook on my desk, page numbered, dated, waiting for the next entry. Patricia called me last night. She asked me if I felt better now, if winning had felt good. I told her the truth. I told her it did not feel like winning. It felt like finding a green spiral notebook in a drawer I had forgotten about, and realizing I had been carrying the answer with me the whole time, and nobody had ever thought to ask me what was inside.